So thank you all for joining today. My name is Dr. Shridhar Iyer. I'm co-director of the National University Center for Organ Transplant and the HPB and liver transplant surgeon at the National University Hospital, Singapore. My co-host is Dr. Sajid Malik, upper GI and bariatric surgeon with interest in MIS surgery and also AI. He's a chair of ELSA, ICC, and DT projects and plays a key role in the ELSA Society. We are very honored to have Professor Andrew Gumbs, who's the Chief Surgical Officer at the American Hospital of Tblisi. He's also the Editor-in-Chief of Artificial Intelligence Surgery and CEO of Talos Surgical, which specializes in autonomous surgery. He's a professor of surgery at Grigol, Robakidze University and University of Magdeburg. He is a HPB robotic and laparoscopic surgeon and has delivered numerous local, regional, and national and international talks on the subject. His articles have been published in prestigious journals like JAMA Surgery, Annals of Surgery, Surgery, etc. More importantly, he is also volunteered for Doctors Without Borders in Democratic Republic of Congo and Haiti, and also done humanitarian missions to Ecuador. So while pushing the frontiers of surgery in terms of AI, at the same time, he has a 30,000-foot view of what a large population needs and doesn't have access to even basic healthcare. So it puts him at a very unique place to have a perspective. So with that, I would like to kickstart, and over to you, Sajid, to get the
thank you.
Going.
Thank you, Professor Shridhar, for the brief introduction, and thank you, Professor Gumbs, for joining ELSA platform. I would like to thank you on behalf of Professor David Olamanto, who would be joining us as the General Secretary of the ELSA Society, and President Professor Mahir Uzman, who is the current president and is based in Turkey. I would like to thank you first of all, and this is the ELSA TV platform, which is live exactly at the moment onto the YouTube channel of the ELSA. I would start with you. Would you tell us briefly about the background and what sparked you basically to integrate artificial intelligence in the surgery, which is in itself is very exciting, but the audience would like to hear directly from you what exactly has sparked you to integrate both things together?
Well, you know, it's funny because I'm here in Germany right now. I'm at Magdeburg, where I'm a professor. With my chairman Roland Kroner, he actually lent me his office. He's over in a very important meeting. So I love using Roland's background because it has next generation Star Trek, and I just want to put a plug in for Star Trek. You know, Star Trek is near and dear to my heart because it was the first on-screen kiss in the United States of a Black woman and a white man, and I mentioned that because that's you know, very similar to my background. Of course, my father's Caribbean and my mother is Italian. So I've always, you know, been in love with technology from the early days of Star Trek, watching reruns in the 70s, and it's amazing. I've talked to other surgeons and how Star Trek has influenced them to dream of an ideal future of equity and inequality, and it really helps you get through a bit of the misery of the reality of what we live in today. So I hate to get into to such heavy topics so soon, but with this background, I felt like God was trying to tell me something. So I initially did my medical school and undergrad at Yale University, and back then Yale University was actually one of the pioneers in laparoscopic surgery. We had this thing, Top Gun training course and everything with Butch Rosser. And I got exposed to minimally invasive surgery at an early in my training. And we were very close to Medtronic headquarters in Connecticut. It was just down the street from Yale. So I've always been very interested in technology. I ultimately even did a year fellowship in minimally invasive liver and pancreatic surgery with Brice Gaillet. And actually, I worked with a company called Endocontrol, which does handheld robotics. So I've always been interested in robotics and technology. When the main robot, the intuitive robot, the Tblisi came around, I was actually less enamored with it because I felt like it took away from the surgeon. It took away our best sense as a surgeon. And to me, it is a sense of touch. You can't replicate that well with the Tblisi. So I've always been interested in handheld robotics, robots where the surgeon can remain in contact with the patient. And so when artificial intelligence came around, it really inspired me to what I thought robotics could be and what robotics should be. It's funny because for a period of my life, about almost 9 years, I was in private practice, and I actually stopped. I kept publishing, but at a much lower rate, and I really lost the joie de vivre, if you will, about being a surgeon. When surgery in America is, at least where I was, and unfortunately, it sounds like it's gotten worse, and unfortunately, that is spreading, I think, around the world. It's become a business, and people who have done private practice or exclusively, they know what I'm talking about. And once it becomes dollars and cents, your desire to be a surgeon gets sucked right out of you. And I decided to move to France. This was over 5 years ago. I started publishing again, and people started to recognize my work again. And I got asked to actually write an editorial, an invited editorial, and it was titled "Searching for a Better Definition of Robotic Pancreatic Surgery" or something. Searching for a better definition of robotics, because it became very clear to me that people, surgeons, us, doctors, do not really understand what robotics is. We don't understand the concept of a telemanipulator. The Tblisi is simply a telemanipulator. It's simply level 1. If we have 6 levels of surgical autonomy, similar to, based on the 6 levels of an autonomously driving car. And the Tblisi, what everyone calls the robot, is really the lowest level of autonomy, right? It's just remote control. So I was more interested in the further levels of autonomy, the more advanced levels of autonomy. And I started to, publish more in it. And I actually did a master's in artificial intelligence. I became more and more interested in it. I got asked eventually if I was interested in becoming an editor-in-chief of a journal. That we wanted to call it Intelligent Surgery. And I wanted to have a section called Artificial Intelligence Centers of the World, because I wanted people to find out about these centers. Because as you know, and a lot of your audience members know, it's very interesting, artificial intelligence, but it's very difficult to find centers and places that do it. So I wanted to highlight these centers. And the publishers came back and they're like, why don't we call it artificial intelligence surgery? And this was, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, and I can't remember. And I had to ask my friends, I'm like, am I crazy calling a journal artificial intelligence surgery? Am I going to get laughed off the street? And lo and behold, as you know, the timing couldn't be better. So it was a very long process of evolution. And as you mentioned, I have worked in the Congo. I have worked in Ecuador. I have worked in Haiti. And what these countries need is not a Tblisi robot, right?
Yes.
You guys know it as well as I do.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what is more fascinating, which I haven't been this fascinated to be a surgeon in my life, to be honest, but it is the power of algorithms, the power of machine learning, the power of autonomy to dramatically change healthcare as we know it in our lifetime. And that's what's so exciting. And I'm sorry for that long explanation,
No,
but
absolutely. It is
but you
important.
asked, and that is why I cannot stress enough what an exciting time it is to be a surgeon. A lot of residents now, they're like, oh, we don't get to operate as much, we have less hours, we're doing less cases, and I'm like, look, when I was your age, I was just holding a retractor. I wasn't seeing anything. You're watching the entire procedure from the beginning to the end. Every moment, you are learning 1,000 times more than I was at your age. This is a golden age for you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Can't agree more.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that was very fabulous to tell the audience about. Like, it's not like achieving a goal like in a straight way, in a straight pattern. It's like there are a lot of things, lot of effort, hard work, efforts you are putting collaterally and collateral works, which is basically bringing you at one level, and then you are exactly going for. And then I can see the passion in your talk currently at this stage as well. Like, talking about still having a passion to learn and to deliver what exactly have been learned. So thank you so much for telling us like exactly. I think it would be very useful for the juniors who are basically looking forward into the future, if they want to achieve, because there is a lot of misnomer about the artificial intelligence. Is the machine going to take up my job? No, definitely not. So it's rightfully explained by you. So in your experience, have this artificial intelligence have influenced the surgical field? As I said, machine is going to take up your job. So are the machine going to take up your job into the surgical field or going to influence anything into the future? Thank you.
I'm so happy that you asked that question because, my father's from the Caribbean, what we call developing country, what used to be called other things back in the past, and depending on who you ask, even other terms. But I always became a doctor because I wanted to be unemployed one day. I want to be a doctor so that I can eliminate my job. That has always been my goal. But again, when I was in private practice, that was not at all the goal. And it was really focused on how do I maintain my job, maintain my patients, my pay, my salary. And, I think for people who are solely worried about protecting their job, I think personally they're in the wrong field, because I would love to, what's going to happen? I'm focused on liver and pancreatic cancers. I would love for those to be eliminated. You know what I'm going to do the next day? I'm going to have I'm going to smoke a pack of cigarettes and drink 6 beers. I mean, I obviously I'm not going to do that, but I mean, what a wonderful and joyous day. I would love to eliminate the need. That's the point of being a doctor. That's what I always thought. That being said, the artificial intelligence is not going to replace us ever. We even wrote a paper called Keeping Surgeons in the Loop, where we compared handheld robotics, liver resections for colorectal metastasis done with handheld robotics compared to the complete surgical system, the Tblisi system. And we found that, if you do it with the surgeon in contact with the patient, a higher percentage, it's obviously just a small study, but we found that a much higher percentage of surgeries could be done minimally invasively, could be done with robotic assistance than with the complete system. The point of that paper was to argue that doctors, surgeons need to learn about artificial intelligence. They need to learn about real robotics, and they need to make the decisions. We cannot have things forced upon us. So a lot of people are afraid of artificial intelligence. They don't want to hear anything about it. And that is the biggest mistake we can make. We need young surgeons and surgeons my age who know about artificial intelligence and are driving the ship. We cannot have things imposed upon us. And my favorite example of this is, people, I remember talking about autonomous actions in surgery years ago, and people, again, thought I was being ridiculous. Even now, when I talk about autonomous actions, people, some people think I'm a little bit exaggerating, but I always use this story. I was flying back from Houston maybe 18 months ago, maybe 2 years ago. I can't remember, flying to New York. And we land in New York, JFK, and it was a rough landing. And the pilot gets on and basically said, sorry, everybody, about the rough landing, but we were using the autopilot to land. So essentially, They were using artificial intelligence, autonomous actions to land a plane with 300 patients.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that they used autopilot to land planes. I knew they do it for the middle part of it, but not for takeoff and landing. And nobody asked my permission. Nobody, I had no informed consent. They're just doing it, you know? So if we're not intimately aware of what autonomy means, what the different level means, what the different technologies are coming and going, what algorithms are, what deep learning architecture is, then, you know, we are going to be, you know, the next generation is going to have a big problem. So it's very important for our generation and well, I'm in the old generation now, unfortunately, but for our generation to learn about this stuff and to prepare the young people for the future. Otherwise, we're going to get left in the dust. And countries that don't focus on this are going to have a big problem in the future, unfortunately. That's
right. Yeah. So, yeah, that's a great perspective. So jumping to the more specific aspects. Now, I'm a HPB surgeon. So obviously, I would like to know and also expand my own horizon. What are the promising applications you find, especially in the field of MIS? Now, ELSA has to do with minimally invasive surgery and endoscopy. And I'm a HPB surgeon. And what are the applications that we can look at in MIS and HPB?
So I think, you know, there's many ways you have to look at this. First, you have to look at what happens in the operating room, and then you have to look how AI will affect things before the operating room and after the operating room. And the way I like to think of it is artificial intelligence in surgery. That involves things preoperatively and postoperatively. And then artificial intelligence surgery or autonomous actions. What helps the surgeon in the operating room? You know, all the surgeons, we would love assistance, more information in the operating room during surgery. So first off, I think the most exciting thing and the most impactful thing that exists already is radiomics, right? I love to quote my friend Takeaki Ishizawa, the chairman of surgery at Osaka. He had, you know, this paper on hepatocellular carcinoma, where they can basically tell whether, you know, just looking at radiomics, looking at the voxels, the 3D pixels, and they could tell which tumor is a bad actor and which tumor is going to be a good actor. And this dramatically exchanges what we do. Terrorizing for some surgeons, because now it doesn't matter if it's just resectable, you know, it just matters should we resect it or when we should resect it. But guess what? We cannot play around with people's lives. And we need to know, you know, you always wonder these patients, you're like, oh my goodness, I don't know what I'm doing here. There's a big tumor, you know, but what the heck, young patient. And then the patient lives for years. And then the opposite, you do a surgery, everything's fine. And then you see metastasis, you know, 3 months later on the first scan. And, you know, it's criminal for us not to be using that information now. And that information exists today. But unfortunately, a lot of hospital systems are burning money with complete robotic surgical systems, and they don't have money to put it into artificial intelligence. So that, you know, that is the first example that I love. Then we can obviously use an analysis, not obviously, but we can theoretically use an analysis of pathomics, of, you know, of looking at the pixels of pathology slides, and again, to tell bad actors, good actors. We just published a paper on whole genomic sequencing. You know, back, we remember the Human Genome Project. I don't even remember how many millions of dollars it costs, but now you can essentially do a whole genomic sequence for about $1,000, which, you know, for us is mind-blowing. And, you know, why aren't we using that information? You know, we wrote a whole paper on it, but clearly, if we can, we are in an age where we can start to truly give personalized medicine, right? We've been talking about personalized medicine for decades, but we're in an era where we can do it. So I think to give us a brain so we can stop guessing is the most powerful thing that we have to focus on. But of course, this is the channel for surgeons, and we're surgeons. And we would, you know, what I think is the most exciting is augmented reality during operations. I think Biophotonics, you can argue whether it's artificial intelligence or not. It's not. It's an imaging modality. But if we could use surgeomics or a real-time analysis of the image, maybe of the intensity of the biophotonics, to again find out if the tumor is going to be a bad customer or a good customer. You know, but I am impressed with the augmented reality I've been seeing out of China. They are doing beautiful things. I mean, the images of the pancreatic vascular anatomy is stunning and beautiful. And I think, in particular, with liver metastases, I think we can actually increase our indications for surgery now, because we can have more confidence that we're catching all the Mets. We can do safer surgeries. We can do more parenchymal sparing surgeries. So I love, you know, HPB surgery, as we know, is difficult. It's difficult. It's full of complications. Survival is not like colorectal and breast and everything.
Exactly.
It is in many ways, it is a miserable profession for these reasons. But in the era of AI, you know, the marriage of AI and HPB surgery in particular is, you know, is a bon mariage. I think somebody wrote a paper in a journal using that phrase, and I love it, because we need this technology, and we can dramatically impact how we do surgery, the indications, the safety. So, you know, I could go on, but there's so much out there.
So especially with pancreatic surgery, I mean, all the pancreatic HPV surgeon would have seen perfect surgery, margins are clear, and yet 3 months, 6 months down the line, they get a recurrence. And you're absolutely right. I mean, we need more than just resectable or not resectable. We are incorporating more and more, but a lot more can be done. Coming to the arena of patient safety, and that's a very important, pertinent topic. There's, you know, if you can record the critical view of safety, the most common operation, lab collie. Can you tell us something about this, and how do we incorporate it into daily practice, and how do we promote that? Because lab collie is done by general surgeons, done in all different kind of settings, from literally the most basic of healthcare to tertiary healthcare. So how can we make it safer for patients?
So we'll talk about that in 1 second, but you remind me, they're starting to do a critical view of safety for Whipple procedure, critical view of safety for a sleeve gastrectomy. You know, so the critical view of safety is fundamental. And, you know, on your iPhone, you can download an app called the Surgeon's Jarvis. I think it's about $49.95. And you're a young surgeon, you're having difficulty, you can have your scrub nurse hold up the phone, turn on the camera, and it'll actually tell you if you've obtained the critical view of safety or not. And, you know, this is a product I like to talk about. I have no financial affiliation to them, but I'm surprised I haven't contacted them. I keep talking about them. But this is a perfect example of something that exists that can help surgeons if they're having a hard time with the critical view of safety. You know, the lines turn from red to green when you've met all the criteria and what have you. So that is a perfect example. I'm surprised, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen someone do a study yet. I keep asking when I go around the world, I keep asking people to do a study, to use this program and see if you're able to reduce the amount of bile duct injuries. But I think that is a great example. And, you know, I like to keep mentioning America because, you know, America oftentimes things happen first in America, but you can imagine someone gets a common bile duct injury and the lawyer finds out that you didn't use this. I should probably stop mentioning this because heaven forbid a lawyer hears one of these talks, but if you're not using this technology and if common bile duct injury, should that be a problem? I don't know. Maybe it should be, maybe it shouldn't be, but we at least need to know that it exists. You know, anyone can download it on their phone. You don't have to be a doctor to download it on your phone. So that is a perfect example of something that's been around for, my goodness, almost 5 years now.
Wow.
So.
Fantastic. I mean, so do you find that there are some challenges in implementing AI in surgical practice. But what are the barriers? I mean, you say these are available. Is it inertia of adoption? Is it lack of awareness? I kind of hard to understand when there is something available and it's not expensive. I just say just take a photograph of critical view of safety. But yet I find, you also have these protocols and things like that. But how much is the adoption? How much is the compliance? It's a problem. So do you find any challenges in adoption of AI? Should it be much more than what we actually do?
Yeah, it's so interesting how different countries have different regulations and opinions on artificial intelligence.
Okay.
And, I would like to talk now a little bit about facial recognition, right? So I want to do facial recognition of people in intensive care unit. I want to look to fat changes in the face and correlate it with nutritional status. Take a picture every day of someone's face, maybe take a picture of their lower extremities, use some computer vision, and see if you could create essentially a virtual prealbumin level or a nutritional status blood level, because
like
not every center around the world has access to prealbumin, or if they do, it's cost prohibitive. But if you could create an algorithm, you just have a program, you're just taking a picture of someone and you can tell whether their nutritional status is changing, wouldn't that be nice? That'd be so fantastic. I think it'd be good. You take a picture of your patient every day, even you just feed it into the computer and you get some data out. Wouldn't that be lovely? But people went crazy about the concept of privacy and all these things in countries like America. So a lot of companies stopped doing research in facial recognition. They said, you know what? It's not worth the hassle, and they're out. So what has happened in other countries with less regulation on this topic, they've gone ahead. They're doing facial recognition and they've been doing it for years. So it's a very complex issue. And as I get older, I have much more compassion for politicians, because you realize, sometimes there isn't, oftentimes things aren't black and white. There's no easy answer. But I think for healthcare, we should have very much fewer barriers in artificial intelligence. But then, of course, as we started the talk, I'm from the United States, where we had things like the Tuskegee Airmen experiments, where they infected Black airmen with syphilis and followed them for decades just to follow what would happen. So, unfortunately, we need a lot of protections, if you will, because a lot of people do evil things, of course. But, as far as facial recognition software in nutrition, we cannot use the same rules for everything. I do agree artificial intelligence in the defense world is a different story. But by the same token, what happens if other countries have no regulations and they're able to develop things that leave us in the dust? So it's a scary time for AI, and I understand people's concern, but not in healthcare.
Yes, I mean, if we can do something good for the patients, we must do it, or at least find a way out.
With liver cancer, with pancreatic cancer, these patients are up against a vicious enemy. So we really need all the help that we can get, and soon. And that reminds me of the next barrier, which I think you're dancing around. The biggest barrier I see is funding, right?
Yes.
The hardest thing is to get funding for these things. Again, because hospitals around the world are having harder and harder time with money. They're having to buy robots at exorbitant prices to compete with the hospital down the street. So we have these two opposing forces of more robotics and therefore less money for things like artificial intelligence that could probably impact more people, exponentially more people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely true. And in robotics, I also find that the technology adoption and evidence doesn't always match. And many times, it's a combination of peer pressure, industry, media, rather than pure evidence. But yes, being in a seat as yourself, as editor-in-chief of artificial intelligence surgery, I also want to ask, how do you drive to seek evidence for the technology? Because many times the adoption far exceeds or outstrips the evidence most of the times, as far as technology is concerned.
So, people have been talking about artificial intelligence for decades now. People have had a lot of the ideas for artificial intelligence before artificial intelligence really existed. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, computer vision, natural language processing, all of those things were really developed over the last, I would say, 12 to 15 years. And unfortunately, people really started dreaming about things a little bit too early. But it's a nice time now because we have those algorithms now. We have reinforcement learning. We have the technology now to accomplish many of these things. It is key. Another thing for young surgeons and all surgeons is to work with industry, intimately involved. It's very important that surgeons work with industry to develop products. Now that helps the industry. When they have a clinician, the studies have shown it, that when they have a clinician early in the game, they succeed. If they get the clinician, if they develop something and then they try to find an application for it, they've got a hammer and then they're looking for a nail, that doesn't work economically. So one of the purposes of my company was to link clinicians with good ideas who are in the trenches every day with people who can develop their idea, and investors who can invest to help develop the idea. And I'm always surprised and saddened how difficult that is. It's almost like we don't help each other out. I find surgeons, when they get a nice connection with somebody or an investor or with a company, they hold on to it and they don't want to share it with anybody else. And I cannot tell you how many years I wasted making all of these connections. And all of these connections took me years and years to make. And wouldn't it have been nice if someone I could have just called someone and they could have helped walk me through it, but that doesn't really exist. That didn't exist, at least when I was growing up. I don't know if it's different from you, but I also noticed, being an American who now lives in Europe, America I have a different perspective on now, right? Because I'm no longer living in America, and yes. I am impressed by the sheer wealth of America and of investors, and also the risk taking that Americans have compared to other countries. So one of the things I like to do by traveling around is I like to find all of these diamonds in the rough, and I like to link them with people in America. I like to connect the world. That's another purpose of the journal, is to share knowledge, not to keep knowledge, for me, so I can earn an extra buck. If I have an idea, some people are like, oh, patent the idea, don't talk about the idea, don't do this. It's like, no, we're in it to cure patients at the end of the day, So we need to work together, and the more we work together, the sooner we will resolve these issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think just leading from your ideas, and as you said about we now have got all the algorithms and the technology is being incorporated, and you have given a perfect example which would make my question very easy. When you were 18 months ago, when you were traveling in USA, in Houston, I think, and they were using automated pilot. So when we talk about the automated surgery and the machine learning, deep learning things, and especially in AI, what's your opinion about a very important aspect of the ethical consideration because apart from the legalities and the regulations, being a surgeon, there are a lot of ethical and the moral responsibilities on myself, my team, as well as into the society as well. So what are the ethical considerations which are important in terms of considering incorporating artificial intelligence in surgery?
So we're gonna get into it. You want to get into it? We'll get into it. But I do have to remind for something I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
The importance of good data. The algorithms aren't the problem. The artificial intelligence, the architectures aren't the problem. The good data is the problem. The clean data is the hard part right now. That's where we all come in. If we could work together to get data in the right hands, clean data, that is really the limiting factor right now. So now to autonomous actions. We have to understand what a surgeme is, what a dexeme is. We're not going to go from, no surgery to the robot doing the entire procedure. A lot of surgeons, when I started talking about artificial intelligence surgery, thought that we would do that. We would go from, okay, I'm doing the laparoscopic cholecystectomy. Now the robot is doing the laparoscopic cholecystectomy. It is not going to do that. It's going to be a stepwise fashion, right? So I like to use the example of a Whipple procedure. One part of the Whipple procedure is the gastrojejunectomy, the reconstruction of the stomach afterwards. That's a surgeme, okay? A surgeme, multiple surgeons will create the whole Whipple procedure, right? The pancreatic head resection is a surgeme. The dissection of the unsnip process perhaps is a surgeme, or is a dexeme of the pancreatic head resection. So a dexeme is a smaller part of say, the gastrojejunectomy. Let's stick with the gastrojejunectomy. When you put the stapler in and you make the gastrointestinal anastomosis, that would be a dexeme. When you close the hole that remains, that would be another dexeme. So making the holes is a dexeme, putting the stapler in, that's a dexeme, closing it, that's a dexeme. Those three dexemes, for instance, will create one surgeme, right? So as you know, we have a stapler made by Covidian that has a sensor in it. If the tissue's not thick enough, it won't fire. If it's too thick, it'll slow down the fire, but it has, level 2 autonomy. It'll do that dexing for us. So that part of the Whipple procedure is already automated. That already exists, okay? Now the STAR robot, I think it's being developed in Johns Hopkins, but I'm not even sure. That is able to do in an animal model, I don't know if they've done it in humans, it's able to do a gastrointestinal anastomosis, in an open way or laparoscopically, all right? They have to inject fluorescent dye around the cut edges so that the robot can see what it's doing, but still, that is another example of, I would probably call that of a surgeme. It's doing an entire surgeme. Well, a dexeme, I guess, because the dexeme, the injection around it would be a dexeme, and then the robot would be doing the other part, right? And that would create a surgeme. So we need to understand that it's going to be a stepwise fashion, right? And, I love to use the example. People say, oh, we're so far away from level 5 autonomy, right? Level 5 autonomy is where there's no human interaction. There's no, it's just the robot or the device that treats the patient, right? And so I always love to use the example. We have multiple examples of level 5 in healthcare, right? If you have a patient with an arrhythmia and they have an AICD device, the AICD will detect the arrhythmia and give a life-saving shock
automatically
with no doctor involved.
Exactly.
So that has been around for decades. Level 5 autonomy, treating, diagnosing, and saving patients' lives has been around for decades. Nobody had a problem with that regulation. Nobody, is it using technically a machine learning algorithm or what have you? Give me a break. It's autonomous, right? It's level 5 autonomy. So it already exists. So, and thank God it does exist, because that can treat a patient with that problem better than you or I ever could, or a pacemaker, right? It just gives someone, it's pacing them. That granted, it's automatic, if you will. Maybe it's not autonomous, it's automatic, but it's a device that is autonomous, that is treating a patient without our input. So ethically, we've already overcome that, right? And like I told you with the plane with 300 patients, the ethics, ethics in the world we live in today are really ruled by who has the power, who has the money, right? So this conversation get me in a lot of trouble. So I will shy away from that. But I think it's important to note that it exists, and there are multiple examples of level 5. So it's coming in the operating room, whether you like it or not, it's coming.
Yeah. Okay, I think it's I completely agree with you. And exactly when you are talking about the same thing, the ethical consideration and the regulations, and you have also given example of the level 5. I actually had no idea about like exactly we already have these device around us,
For
which
decades.
is exactly
For decades. Yeah.
exactly for the decades. And I just recently renewed my ACLS and the thing, and I used it. I was not thinking about it, that it's an automated device. And what do you think about like into the future when we, especially at your stage, when you are working as a editor-in-chief in artificial intelligence, and so how do you think that there was a paradigm shift from open to laparoscopic surgery, from laparoscopic to, there was a big gap to start with the robotic surgery. And how do you perceive into the future, the next 5 to 10 years, we are moving forward? What will be the future of artificial intelligence, particularly this machine learning in upcoming years?
During surgery itself. So
yeah.
So the way to look at that is really what type of robotics does the world need right now? There's that famous Lancet article from 2015 explained about 60% of the world's population has no access to a surgeon, to a gastroenterologist. People who don't travel to the developing world do not truly understand what that means. It's hard, even for me, who've traveled to these places, who've tried to give healthcare to these places, to understand what that means. I've always tried to find this reference, but I've been told, and I cannot find this reference, that the second most cost-effective intervention for a population after a vaccination program, the second most cost-effective intervention is for a population to have access to a general surgeon. Now, when I was in the Congo, I was doing C-sections, I was doing external fixators, I was operating on babies, I was operating on children, I was doing gynecology, thoracic surgery, everything, and it was really eye-opening, to see the least. It is amazing what you can do with a scalpel and silk. It is amazing, and you don't really appreciate it until you find yourself, and so I actually wrote a few papers on that, on how important it is once you finish your general surgery training, once you have the right to do it, how important it is for every surgeon out there to go on a mission to a developing world and to see the gift that you have given yourself, the power that you have given yourself. And once you realize this, to put on the, what are those things on horses? What are those things called? The blinders?
Blinders.
To put your blinders on and then just say, I'm going to be a robotic surgeon. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do everything I can laparoscopically and minimally invasively is hard to do, because you realize how better that money could be spent, right? So do I envision that a robot needs to be, in my lifetime, around every place in the world so everyone can get access to robotic surgery? Of course not, because that's never going to happen. Before I die, unfortunately, there's still going to be a huge portion of the population that doesn't have access to healthcare. So, but that being said, I think cost-effective minimally invasive surgery is worthwhile if you can reduce the amount of, hospital stay, of lost work days, and what have you. So what I'm currently very interested in is a non-console robotic system. Using zero gravity arms. When you let go of the instrument stays in place. the camera can either follow one of your instruments, or you can just move it, and you can start to operate by yourself. You don't need an assistant. So this type of thing, where you can develop a robotic arm for, under $10,000, and you can start even to have surgeons understand kind of the principles of, robotic surgery is different from laparoscopic surgery because you're limited by those arms, especially the Da Vinci with one base. So to start to learn and have the advantage of having that support, that increased viscosity, that that reduced tremor while it's being held by a robotic arm, I think this is very interesting, and this could be cost effective. So I'm very interested in this company that's developing that right now. I won't plug it, so that
No, of course not.
out of respect, but I do think cost effective robotics or zero gravity arms, whether they're robotic or not, however you want to call them, I think this is really an exciting time. And this is why I like to bring up the fact that the Da Vinci was initially developed by the US military to be used during open surgery, right? They shifted gears when laparoscopy came so that they could turn it into a moneymaker, which I don't fault them for. They need money to develop, so I understand why they did it. But it's fundamental for us to realize that the birth of it was for another application. To do telemanipulation, was to do remote control, was for the surgeon to operate behind enemy lines or the battle zone, whatever, to operate on patients. It's a beautiful idea. I have no problem with that. But if a surgeon thought, if I'm doing a Whipple and I'm having a hard Whipple, do I really want to be 6 feet away? Is that the best way for a big tumor? I'm not sure. So this is why I like to talk about it, and I like people to understand what robotics can really do for us. Imagine you're having a retractor held by a robotic arm, even during an open case, and you have perfect retraction. Maybe you have another arm perfectly retracting. You don't have some poor medical student like this for 8 hours. Things like this are priceless. Even just one camera that can follow your instruments while you're doing a laparoscopic cholecystectomy. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Do I need a Da Vinci to take out a gallbladder? Of course I don't. So
that's true.
Yeah,
I think the applications are endless if we open our minds and if we demand from industry these products, and if we support industry that has these products, and if we don't get trapped by trends.
So we can go on and on. Actually, it's such an interesting conversation, and we are sort of struggling for time. But I have some important things that I would like to cover so that we don't miss that out. I have been a training director for over 10 years in my hospital, and the program director for surgery. So I have an interest in training and education, and as all these societies do, we have interest in training the next generation, keeping the momentum going. Is there some practical, examples? I mean, the robotic system has this ability to tell you what your economy of movements was, the accuracy and targeting and things like that. But out of the realm of Da Vinci, is there anything that we can use to improve surgical training?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're actually, as we speak, writing a white paper on AI and training of surgical trainees for exactly what you're describing. Because, with simulators, with box trainers that can record movements and what have you, we can finally get data, and we can understand why, some trainees are able to do things very quickly and other trainees are not. And it'll be much easier for us to train those trainees who struggle with things to get to a higher level faster. So I think that is an enormous advantage. I mean, right now, imagine if, you can even do a virtual cholecystectomy. You could do a virtual hepatectomy, or you could even put in even as an attending, your patient's tumor, and you could do a virtual dissection wouldn't that be amazing? I mean, pilots have this, right? They have these simulators. And if we could have personalized simulation before the surgery, I mean, it would be phenomenal. Now you have to figure out how you're going to pay for this, how you're going to have the surgeon, do the operation twice, or what have you. But that's a secondary problem. But maybe someone was like, oh, if you want it sounds crazy to say it, but I'll say it, like, if you pay an extra $500, your surgeon can do a simulation of your surgery beforehand. Again, I hate to bring it back to the money, but I need to stress the importance of money to do all of these things. Without money, we can't do any of these things. So it's very important for people to take that into consideration also.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course.
Yes.
Another thing which I would like to ask about, like you can see in my background, this is the ELSA app which we are using with the QR codes. So this is the app. Being a surgeon, I developed it with the help of the tech people because I can't use the software programming thing. So just giving this example, like we, for the Society ELSA app, have a app before, which was basically created by a person who was a non-professional, non-medical personnel. And that was run by that person and then was obsoleted after a few months because that was a purpose, it was given an advice to create it. But this time we decided to create the app of the society under direct supervision of, like, I decided to do with the help of the whole team of that ICC team under guidance of Professor David Elumanto, like how to develop the app basically, which should be a need of a surgeon or the GI surgeon or HPP surgeon, all the surgery and allied. So in your opinion, like when we talk about the tech personnels and artificial intelligence, and they're developing the robots. So we need to work, you have already mentioned it briefly during your talk. So if they are developing we are talking about Da Vinci or the other Hogos or the other systems. So would it be better for incorporation for the medical people to be advising and incorporating instead of like instead of the industry driving us, we should drive the industry, other way around? What's your thought?
In an ideal world, that would be the case, right? I mean, I think there have been many instances and studies that have shown that when doctors control a healthcare system, outcomes improve, cost decreases, and that is the way to go. Unfortunately, for the life of me, I will never understand why that paradigm has been shifting throughout essentially my entire career, and they've been putting in businessmen and women to run things, and I'm not sure if that is the best utilization of resources. That's such an infuriating topic that you scrambled my brain with that, but yeah. So it is important that we work with industry, and one of the examples I like to use is the radiation oncologists. I mean, this is a slightly. I'll get to my point. Radiation oncologists, they have a physicist full-time on staff that does the actual final calculation.
Absolutely.
For obvious reasons. And in an ideal world, departments of surgery would have an artificial intelligence computer scientist on staff to help make sure that the data is clean, that the data is being collected properly, and to work with teams to create usable, AI that can help with day-to-day decisions. So in an ideal world, this is what would happen. And I don't think one computer scientist for an entire hospital would be enough. Maybe it's a good start, and then people who are interested will work with that person and we'll start to develop things. But I think we also need to develop surgeons, young surgeons, AI doctors. Maybe you go to medical school, you do the minimum to get your license, and then you'd get a PhD in artificial intelligence, and now you're an AI doctor, and you are working with your hospital to analyze your data to improve outcomes. I think that's another thing we need to start thinking about and talking about.
Yeah.
You know, one of the reasons I want to do a PhD in AI is I want to start to develop this. I'm working with several different universities to develop a training center for people so that they can learn this. But I think it's very important that chairmen, that deans, that head of hospital systems invest in this. You know, otherwise, what's that expression? You know, you don't have to use AI, but if you don't, you'll be left in the dust. You know, I didn't do it justice, but you don't have to do it. But the person that does is probably going to leapfrog you. You know, so it's something that you cannot stick your head in the sand. That would be a mistake.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's very insightful. I mean, we are really running short of time, and you know, there is. What would be one message, important message that you would want to give to our audience? And there'll be a lot of youngsters watching this. We encourage students to watch. And what's the important message that you would want to give before we close? And number two is, if somebody has interest in pushing the frontiers in this arena, I mean, we all can't escape what is coming. We have to adopt. We need to, you know, make it better for the patients, and so we have to move with times. But for somebody who wants to be at the cutting edge, go to the next level, get a PhD, get a training in this arena, where should they look for? So, I mean, that would be my last question.
Thank you for letting me plug the journal. I think the journal is a fantastic place because we really focus on AI from all disciplines, all surgeries. We consider endoscopy, you know, gastroenterology, bronchoscopy, interventional radiology, interventional cardiology. We consider any intervention surgery. You know, I think it's important to realize that surgery is no longer divided. It's all becoming fused, you know, and if you ignore that, you know, do that at your peril. It's very important to see what other specialties, how they're using AI, because you'll get ideas on how to do it in your patients. So I think read the journal, be an active participant. We need to support the journal so that the journal continues to exist and we can help inform people. I think getting a master's in AI is key. We're hopefully going to develop a master's soon that focuses on healthcare, so it'll be even more interesting for young doctors. And you know, I cannot stress enough the importance of getting doctors, maybe who already are computer scientists, have a degree in computer science, getting into, you know, a certain percentage of them into medical school so that they can then do PhDs or become experts in this field. And I have to say it again, it's never been a better time to be a doctor, and it's never been a better time to be a surgeon than now. Radiologists and dermatologists, maybe not so much, but you know, but that's a little bit of a joke, of course.
Yeah.
Of course, of
Yes.
course.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Professor Shridhar, for giving time. And especially, I would like to say thank you to Professor Andrew Gumbs for giving time basically on this platform of ELSA Society. And I would like to say thank you on behalf of whole Executive Council, President Professor Maher, and also Professor David Lumanto, who is the General Secretary of the Society. And I hope this was very exciting for me, for my own learning as well. I have learned a lot, and I think our audience would have learned a lot. I hope we would invite Professor Gumbs again onto this platform and with a new exciting topic, and maybe when the things would be moving forward to the level 5 and 6 or some new advancement. And thank you again. Thank you so much. And I hope to see you again into the next episode. Sorry, Professor Gumbs, want to...
Sorry to say to get the last word,
No,
but
please.
I want to invite both of you to do the podcast. We have a podcast, Artificial Intelligence and Cybersurgery. I'm going to be sending you an invite because I would love to hear more about what you guys are doing, and I'm sure the readers and the readers for our journal And
Yes.
our few watchers on our podcast would love to hear that.
Yes,
Thank you
sure.
so
I mean,
much.
we
Yeah, that would be an
work
honor
with
for us as well.
polo medicine, and we are looking, we have some updates that we are adopting in the hospital. Yes, happy to
Yeah.
talk. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great.
That will be
Thank
an
you so
honor
much.
for us as well. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in next episode. Thank you so much. Stop it.